Okay, Michael Feeley, welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. Uh, okay, sorry, listeners. I want to make sure that the other stream is going live as well, and I believe it is. Yes, it is. Great, great. So I didn't have to press that one. I don't know why I had to press it the other time. Weird things going on here. Still getting the hang of this live stream on YouTube thing, and this is my first show in about 3.5 weeks. Great to be on the air. A couple listeners, excuse me, a couple of potential guests needed to cancel, and a lot of people didn't get back to me, even though I sent out some requests. I don't know what it is, but it's great to be back, and we're at a time of great challenge. But we're going to forget about global events and stuff like that for the purposes of this interview. I mean, if you have anything to say about it, go ahead. But this interview with you going to be focused on esoteric knowledge and finding truths behind it, using your website and your YouTube channel as a guide. I will, Michael Feeley. Quick couple notes for my listeners. This will, of course, be uploaded to YouTube a couple of hours after I'm done. It'll automatically upload because this is a live stream. However, I ask all my listeners, please, for the sake of helping me monetize, listen to my shows on the cost.tv website. I upload them there, and I can only upload hour videos max. So we'll probably have to do this in two parts. I'll post a link to that in the YouTube video description. Listen to it on YouTube for only 15 seconds for the sake of giving me a view count credit, and then listen to it on cost.tv because that channel allows you to monetize. It is a blockchain run channel. It is pennies, but it's still better than nothing. And it may actually have to come to this, listeners. I've kind of wanted to take Andrew Bartz's request that I monetize my show to heart, and he's suggesting a lot of people who do radio need to be willing to monetize their shows now, and I'm starting to agree with him. There may come the day in the very near future where I may be creating a Patreon account and forcing listeners to subscribe to Patreon if they want to listen to my interviews one day after it's uploaded at most, and I may wait 1 or 2 weeks before it gets on YouTube, but that's going to be further down the line. I'll not worry about that now. Right now, I'm still having everybody listen to my shows live on YouTube, which is a nice experience, I will say. And without further ado, I've babbled long enough. Michael Feeley, now's your chance to tell your life story from a primary source perspective, who you are, what you experienced, the research that you've done that caused you to look at the stuff that you do. I will put myself on mute and shut up. I don't have Alex Jones-itis. I don't interrupt my guests, so I will keep my mouth shut while you tell your life story. You've got the floor.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thanks for the invite. If you have any questions at any time, please just jump in and ask them. But my life story, I'm Michael Feeley. I'm from the UK, and from a very early age, probably 6 or 7 years of age, I used to watch biblical films such as the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston, and I used to ask very adult questions of myself, even at the age of 6 and 7. Can these things really happen? Can a man really part the sea? Are these characters real? And that was really a very, very inquisitive mind that I had, even from that very, very young age. I always felt different. I always felt as if I didn't belong here. I always felt as if I'd got off the buzz on the wrong planet. And it was just a feeling that nothing kind of made sense. And from a teenage years, when I was sort of 14, 15 and 16, and you begin to think of careers and what careers you wish to do, I always had an innate passion that I wanted to be a police officer. And many years after that original thought, that dream came true. And I always describe the police force as my first marriage. And you never enter into a marriage with the expectation of getting divorced. Sometimes it simply just happens. And I served in England's two largest cities, London and Birmingham, for 17 years. And I was a patrol officer dealing with all different levels of crime, all different scenarios, from the very, very basic mundane to being first at the scene of a homicide, being the first at the scene of a hostage situation, and so on and so on. And I was very, very well decorated in the work that I did. What it taught me was the art of investigation. the art of going to a scene, piecing together evidence, collecting forensic evidence, and finding that this evidence actually gave the story. Now, regardless of what often people were saying at the scene of these incidents, the evidence spoke clearly. And it taught me how to gain that evidence and piece that evidence together. So my speaking style, my writing style, my presentation style is really short and to the point. And it's short and to the point because when you attend court and you're speaking before a judge, then that judge and jury really only want to know the facts, the relevant facts. They don't want you to go on for 2 weeks talking about things that are not relevant to the case. So I learned again the art of being succinct and just presenting the evidence, just getting it done, getting the conviction in most cases, and then moving on to the next one. Round about 2009, or a little bit before 2009, I was becoming very, very disillusioned with the career that I'd chosen. And I was becoming very, very disillusioned with the things that I was being asked to do, the things that I was having to do. But around about the same time, which looking back on it now in hindsight, was a timed catalogue of events for me. And around about 2009, just before 2009, I began experiencing a lot of what you would describe as supernatural, paranormal events. And the kind of events would be conscious time travel, where my consciousness actually travelled back 159 years to the scene of a crime in the year 1850, which was Victorian England, and I actually witnessed the last moments of a young girl's life, and that really, really shook me to the core. But I was really terrified for about 6 months, and it was only after 6 months that I felt that I could actually talk and speak about this actual incident. But such things as going outside in the day and seeing gigantic UFOs in the sky, being on night duty in the police force and seeing dimensional gateways open up in the sky and having some kind of craft emanating from this wormhole, this dimensional gateway, to coming face to face with a being not of this world. And there was lots and lots of this kind of thing that was happening around about 2009 and in the years that followed. This was a strange time because in 2010, my wife and I decided we wanted to go on vacation, and we decided that we wanted to go to Egypt. Now, about 10 days to 14 days before I went to Egypt, I received a strange email from a psychic medium in Scotland, in the UK, who I didn't know. She didn't know me, and we'd never chatted before. She just contacted me out of the blue and said that she had a message. And that message, in a very short nutshell, was regarding the trip to Egypt. You will uncover many insights of ancient knowledge, and you must understand it before you can teach it. And this was the kind of message. And she also told me that I needed to get, or we needed to get, as close to the right-hand side of the Sphinx of Egypt as we could. So less than 2 weeks later, we went to Egypt. We booked an internal flight to Cairo. We visited all the sites. I expected to have some kind of spiritual awakening or something that was going to happen based on this message, but nothing seemingly did. We got to the closest we could to the right-hand side of the Sphinx, but again, nothing seemed to happen. 7 years later, in 2017, the message then sort of came alive, and there was lots and lots of ancient symbols that were just appearing to me. There was lots and lots of things that were going on in relation to the ancient past and ancient hidden knowledge. So really from 2017 onwards, I began to really look into the esoteric nature of the world. Now, I had no preconceived ideas. I had no belief systems. Based on my background of law enforcement and evidence gathering and investigation, I just followed the evidence where it took me. And what I found is that the whole world has been deceived and has been duped for many thousands of years. History is a lie. When we look at the likes of religion. There are 4,200 religions in the world, and each and every one of them are telling you that they are correct and that the others are wrong. And what I actually found is that all of the ancient monuments around the world, I initially looked at them as individual projects. I would look at Stonehenge. I would look at the likes of the pyramids of Giza. I would look at the Mayan pyramids. I would look at the heads of Easter Island. I would look at the Anunnaki, all the Sumerian scrolls. And initially I would look at them as individual projects. But what I soon found out is that each of these cultures were all referring to the same thing, just under a different name. So I found that mathematically, and based on the theme that they were talking about, in a metaphorical sense, that they were all actually talking about the same thing, all but a different name. And what I also found out is that these cultures were all connected. So all of these different ancient sites were not individual pieces of a jigsaw. They were all part of a gigantic jigsaw, and that jigsaw extended beyond planet Earth to the likes of planet Mars, etc., etc. When I looked into religion, I found that the original Bible was actually the Giza Plateau, the Great Pyramid being Noah's Ark. And when you look at the likes of Genesis, what does Genesis mean? Well, Genesis really means in the mind. So the Genesis in the beginning was in the mind. Now, when you look at gematria and you look at the word in, it is 51. Now, when you look at the slope angle of the Great Pyramid, it is 51.51 degrees, which is 51 degrees, 51 seconds. So the Great Pyramid, I also found, actually represents the human mind, where we have the subterranean chambers, which is the subconscious mind, and we have the upper chambers, which is the conscious mind. And what the Egyptians did within the Great Pyramid was actually mark what is known as the endocrine system of consciousness, which is the thalamus, the pituitary gland, and the pineal gland. And what I did to find this out was I actually put a map overlay of the human head over the Great Pyramid facing north, and I realised that the King's Chamber was situated where the pituitary gland, the pineal gland is situated. The Queen's Chamber is situated where the pituitary gland is situated, and you have that small tower-looking thing inside the Great Pyramid, which is really represented by the Shinto temple. Shinto means the pathway to the gods. So they actually cleverly marked inside the Great Pyramid the endocrine, the consciousness system of the human mind. And it was all of these kind of revelations that were coming up, and again, the same mathematical numbers, the same theme. Everything was now piecing together for this large, global, and beyond blueprint. So that's really, in a nutshell, the last 11, 12 years of my life, revealing ancient secrets, revealing the origins of religions, how the two match, how what people have been told is a complete deception, how it was a contrived deception long ago, that only the initiates, only the people who understood this ancient knowledge, who were chosen to understand this ancient knowledge, would actually understand the metaphors and understand the symbols and the codes. And the people who were uninitiated, the followers of these belief systems, would never understand the deeper meaning, because they cleverly did what is known as Hebraic typology, which is that they've cleverly written many levels of understanding, many different levels of reading within the scriptures, within the ancient monuments, so that you have to understand it at a certain level in order to reveal the truth of what the writers intended. People who are going to church and the people who are going to these different synagogues and mosques and churches are only ever getting the superficial level of understanding. And when you understand the deep esoteric knowledge and understanding, it completely changes your view of the world. Not many people realize that Mother Mary is actually Lucifer. Not many people realize that the Vatican Catholic Church worships Satan and not Christ. And we have all of these really sort of gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching truths that I think people now need to understand and need to be ready for. So that really is, in a nutshell, 11 years of my life. It's becoming more and more enhanced as we speak, and it's becoming more and more enhanced with each week. So who knows where that will go? But there's a lot of ancient knowledge that's coming to me that it's fresh ideas of what these things mean, and it's really an honor to be able to represent what the ancients really tried to teach us.
And I try to learn more and more about that every single day with my research and everything. And before we get into the uh, esoteric stuff, I can't help but bring to your attention this whole issue of the police being told not to do what they well don't want to do, and what a police officer is not supposed to be doing, since you had experience on the force. And now that some of my listeners got me all wrong, they think I hate the police because I try to always expose like their fraud with among other things. There was this video that got taken off YouTube because it was on Alex Jones' channel, but there's still another version of it called "What the Government Doesn't Want You to Know About Your Driver's License" that I was posting like crazy all over the time, exposing how the police are technically stealing money whenever they issue traffic tickets to non-commercial drivers, because vehicle code transportation laws only apply to those in commerce. And of course, if anybody understood common sense, you would realize that if nobody does no harm or intends to cause harm through negligence or deliberate intent, the police, just like anybody in the general public, have no authority to punish them, arrest them, incarcerate them, or any of that other stuff. But yet the police, because they're told to follow just some code that bans things because someone doesn't like it, people get thrown in jail. And the privatized prison system, which is especially rampant in America more than other countries, gets a huge profit, and the police go along to get along. And I don't know if you heard about this officer named Greg Anderson, who made a YouTube video about how to encourage cops. Please respect people's rights. If someone says, "Officer, I wish not to cooperate you because you don't have a warrant and there's nothing you could do about it. Please leave me alone. May I be free to go. Have a good day." Let the person go and don't hassle him. If you hassle him, you're a pathetic excuse for an officer. He basically told him that, and respect people's rights. And he got word from his coworkers. That said, we got word from higher up saying that you better take down the video or you're going to be getting pink slipped. And he said, "I'd rather get pink slipped." So he got pink slipped. He lost his job, and the video got a lot of views, and he ended up getting $400,000 in donations from people who felt sorry for him. Man, how can you not feel a little bit envious of the guy getting $400,000? That's because he lost his job telling police to do the right thing. And well, you said you experienced a similar thing, and this kind of raises the question: if this world is eventually going to finally get its truths revealed and people are going to attain higher consciousness, you would expect that we'd come to a point where we're all going to realize that the common law, which was what the Magna Carta said after the King of England was overthrown in 1215. Well, he wasn't overthrown. He was told to sign the Magna Carta or lose all power and respect everybody's rights. That's the way that common sense says the way the law is. Do no harm through negligence or deliberate intent, no crime. If that's is world comes to that, people are going to have to wonder, where are the police going to go? Where are they going to make their money? How are they going to be able to do anything if they can't incriminate people for doing things that aren't even crimes? It's like hard. Sorry, I have to ask that question, but it's a fair question. It's like a shock to the system to change the world in a way that if you can't lock people up for doing something that they have the right to do, this a lot of people are going to lose their jobs in the privatized prison industry and the police force. So, realizing that and realizing that you were told to do things you didn't want to do, what words of wisdom can you give to all the police out there who want to make things right?
What we have to realise, I mean, again, I can only comment on English British law, which really is, I guess, the origin for many other laws around the world. We still have the Magna Carta. We still have common law. Now, what the problem that we have at the moment is the police are enforcing things that are not law, but they believe that they are law because the government has turned around and said that it's mandatory. Now, mandatory is not law. Mandatory is a command. Now, in England, in the British Parliament, the only way that things can come into law in my country is it goes through the Houses of Parliament, which is the likes of where the Prime Minister, etc., congregate. And if enough MPs, members of Parliament, vote through what's called a majority rule, it then goes to the House of Lords to approve as a law. Now, so if the House of Commons and the House of Lords agree and approve that something should come into legislation, it then has to go to the head of state, which is the Queen, and the Queen has to then sign it into law. Now, what we're finding at the moment is, certainly in relation to the latest pandemic, is ministers are overstepping their authority, and they are not signing things into law in almost a tyrant dictatorship, and they are bypassing what is known as the statutory instrument, which is the legal process in which laws come into force in the UK. And they are basically breaching parliamentary law, and they are actually breaking the law themselves by bringing things in that has not been signed by the Queen into law. So when you get the likes of police officers now, they are actually enforcing unlawfully something that is not even law. It is a guideline, it is a mandate, it is not a legislative process. So my words of wisdom is, regardless of what system you are in, whether it's the military, whether it's the police, they are both disciplined organisations, and you have a rank structure where people of a higher rank than you can order you to do something, but whether or not you wish to do it is still your choice. And I realise that there are consequences of your choice, but there were many occasions where I felt something was wrong and I refused to do it. Now, the senior officers did not know what to do with me, because I point blank refused to do things that I felt was unjust. So just following orders has no weight anymore. The brown shirts of Nazi Germany and the Nuremberg trials and all this, that they said they were just following orders, that has no weight. What you need to do is you need to think, is this right? We all operate under commerce law. We all operate under the law of business. And that law of business is run by the Church of Rome, the Vatican City, the Church of Rome. And through the donation of Constantine, many hundreds of years ago, the Roman Church was given complete authority over secular and non-secular affairs, which is religious and non-religious affairs. They control the law of commerce, the law of business. Now, the main players on these, because it is the law of the sea, maritime law, which extended to the land, we have all of these different terms in modern day society, like relationship and partnership. Everything relates to the waterways. Now, when you have the big players, they operate on the major waterways. They operate on the mainstream. That is why you have the mainstream press, the mainstream media, because they operate on the major waterways. They are the big players in commerce law. And what the police are doing now, they are actually enforcing common law. Sorry, they're enforcing commerce law, but not common law. And they are now becoming pretty much debt collectors for corporations. They are becoming the protection racket for government. And people really in these places, in these positions of authority, really do need to look in the mirror, because they are facilitators of fascism, and they are the facilitators of a global tyranny that is going to bite people on the backside very, very soon. And I really do hope that they can look their children and grandchildren in the eye in the future and tell them that they facilitated this global tyranny, because that is going to be a difficult conversation for them. You get told what to do, but it's up to you whether or not you do it. That is your conscious decision. And I chose many times to say no. And I would urge people in the position that I was formerly to say no when it is not justified.
Very, very well said. And I don't know if this was well. Everything happens for a reason, I'm sure, but interesting timing. How right before this interview with you, I actually got a message on Facebook from Sean Margaret Cohen, who was the first ever guest on my show and is a frequent listener. Some Facebook friend of hers named Bob posted a timeline of sorts for the upcoming year going into December 2021 of some sort of a plan regarding how they plan to keep using this virus scam to impose tyranny. And one of the things that stood out there was um, like in the summertime of 2021, they're going to announce like a debt jubilee for anyone who is willing to get the virus vaccine. And okay, people need to stop falling for this stuff. It is a lie. And I got some other sources that say it is. People are going to wake up to the fact that this whole thing is a lie. And the shutdown I hear from David Icke recently appeared on the Alex Jones channel. And well, there's one Alex Jones channel. It's now banned on video. And he said that people in the UK are not following orders the way they did during the first lockdown. There's a lot more people out in the streets now if you were to go there, and I could say the same is true here in the United States of America as well. Certainly my neck of the woods in Pennsylvania. But we got a lot of stuff coming up in the future that we need to worry about regarding this. But would like to shift gears now and maybe switch to some esoteric knowledge. And I'm going to have a little fun with this. I mentioned David Icke. I did get the chance to see him live in London in October 2012, although the highlight of that trip to London was not seeing David Icke live in Wembley for a 9-hour talk. Actually, it was a 10-hour talk. Um, it was a great talk and all, but the thing that I remember most about that trip to London was when I made a total jackass of myself in front of Buckingham Palace after they took a picture of me and I flipped the bird in the picture to Buckingham Palace, saying "F you" to the Queen. After the picture, I made a total fool of myself shouting, "Queen's a lizard!" in front of Buckingham Palace, and I would estimate that about 60% of the people were laughing out loud and knew exactly what I was talking about, and the remaining 40% looked at me like, "Dude, what the hell is he talking about? What's Queen's a lizard mean?" And I was like, "Sorry, had to do it right in front of the palace, couldn't have done it any better." And then I left saying, "Oh, some of you don't know what Queen's a lizard means. Well, you got some research to do." Well, this show could be the perfect source of research for people that want to know what that means. And you mentioned the Anunnaki in passing. David Icke has kind of got it a little wrong. He's said that the reptilian aliens were the Anunnaki. More what actually is going on, from what I've researched anyway, is that the Anunnaki that Zecharia Sitchin talked about, which were giant human-like extraterrestrials, the bad factions of them anyway, made an alliance with the malevolent factions of reptilian aliens back in the Sumerian times, and they made the alliance with each other, and they took over the thrones of the world, the rulership, the kings, queens, and everything. They posed as leaders and were enslaved the human race ever since. So the reptilian aliens made an alliance with the Anunnakis more than proper, and David Icke has been duped into believing that Zecharia Sitchin was a fraud. That's another story I don't really care to get into, but anyway, you mentioned the Anunnaki regarding esoteric knowledge. My understanding is the false Anunnaki from Nibiru are no longer involved in our reality. That's what I've been told anyway, but there's the reptilian factions maybe to some degree. So regarding these factions of extraterrestrials that are influencing humanity and have over the course of time, you got the floor on this. What do you want to say about it?
No, it's quite clear that humanity is imprisoned. It is quite clear genetically, spiritually, consciously, technologically, we are in a prison. We are limited. And what I feel Zachariah has done, and again, you can argue whether it was deliberate or not, I think he's just made a literal translation of the Sumerian scrolls. And it is in the same way that if somebody was to pick up the Bible or the Quran or the Torah, if they were just to make a literal translation, it goes to what I was saying earlier about the Hebrew epic typology. If you were to make a sweeping glance and a superficial understanding of these books, you would get a completely different version of what they really mean. And I feel that Zechariah has done the same with the Sumerian scrolls. Now, my opinion on the Anunnaki, there's lots and lots of extraterrestrial races that exist. If you wish to, for argument's sake, if you want to change a liquid into a solid or whatever, all you do is just rearrange the atoms. So if you rearrange atoms, then you are going to get different appearances. There are lots and lots of different extraterrestrial groups. I have stood 2 feet away from one of them. I know they exist. I've seen too many unorthodox things in our skies to not believe that there's something going on in different dimensions outside of our normal scope of awareness. Now, whether that is some of our military plus, who knows? I can't say who was piloting these machines. All I can say is there are lots and lots of unorthodox machines out there that are flying in our skies. They are above us, stationary, observing, and we have no knowledge of their existence because we're not being told. So I am fully aware that there are multiple realities going around this one that we're not aware of. Now, my interpretation of the Anunnaki story is really a fresh look, and I acknowledge the Archons. I acknowledge the extraterrestrial races that are in cahoots with different controllers. I'm well aware of that, and I'm not disputing that, and I'm not denying that. But my idea of the Anunnaki is really a fresh look at the Anunnaki, and what I'm finding is that the Anunnaki is actually referring to humanity. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you start analysing the meanings of the words, the names, when you start looking at science now that is coming from the Eastern Bloc, the likes of Russia, the likes of Kazakhstan, that are now beginning to prove that human DNA was actually programmed elsewhere. It is a language, and it is a code. Now, this code has been programmed outside of Earth. It's been programmed somewhere in the cosmos, in the universe, in the skies by, I think, the universal creator of everything, who I also believe created some of the monuments of Earth, especially the Great Pyramid. But this mathematical creator has programmed genetics and DNA. Now, when you look at the human physical body, it does not come from Earth either. It comes from exploding stars from the Orion Nebula. Now, when a star explodes in the Orion Nebula, it creates, through what is known as a triple alpha effect, it creates oxygen and carbon, which is what the composite parts of the human body. So the physical body comes from dead stars from the Orion Nebula, and our genetics has been programmed outside of Earth. So therefore, those who from heaven to earth came is ourself. Now, when you start analysing the word Anunnaki, in some languages it means those who from heaven to earth came, yes, but in other languages it means other things. Basically, it's life from the sky. Now, sky in ancient language is the heavens. So life that came from the heavens is humanity. When you start looking at the likes of Anu, well, Anu is really a divine personification of the sky. So Anu was the chief god. Now that this is connected to Anubis, again Anubis of Egypt. So Anu, the chief god, which is the divine personification of sky. When you start looking at the likes of Alalu, who was meant to be the supervisor of the gold expedition, Alalu means wave genetics. In other words, resonant waves that affect DNA. When you look at science, it tells us that it was actually Crick and Watson who discovered the double helix of DNA in 1953. Well, the Sumerian tablets in their depiction of Enki and Enlil were telling us about double helix then, because they were the Shetty, the Snake Brothers, which is the double helix of DNA. So we have all of these different composite parts of this Anunnaki story. Nibiru, what is Nibiru? It's an ecliptical event, because when you look at how the Sumerians wrote 3,600, which is meant to be the orbit of Nibiru, they wrote it as a gigantic circle, a large circle. So it's an ecliptical event, which is when you see the likes of what looks like a spinning wheel on the Anunnaki tablets. That is really the circuit of the dragon, which again is an ecliptical event. Now, when you look at Anubis. Anubis is really the separation between Sirius A and Sirius B, which is the separation between the seen and the unseen, dark and light. And we look at, again, divine personification of the sky. When we look at, again, taking Zachariah's story that the Anunnaki brought the moon with them 450,000 years ago, but found life on Earth when they got here. Now, without the moon, there is no life on Earth, as with the sun, because the moon keeps the Earth at a 23.5 degree tilt, and it is that tilt that makes this planet inhabitable. It gives us the seasons, it gives us oceans that are liquid, water that is liquid and not solid. So when you look at science and you look at what are known as tidal rhythmites, they have been dated at 2.2 billion years. So that suggests that the moon has been there 2.2 billion years at least, which rules out the 450,000 years of the Anunnaki story. I mean, I'm only going on the Zecharia Sitchin version. Of course, there are others. But because Zecharia Sitchin's is the most famous version and it is the most subscribed to, that is the version that I chose to look into. Now, I don't know if Zecharia was a fraud. I can't say that. What I can say is basically done a literal translation. And there's many universities across the world that have done the same literal translation, have come up with the same story, but it really is a story. And I do think that the Anunnaki is humanity and humanity's potential. You know, we are the giants, we are the potential, we are the Anunnaki by virtue of the fact that we are life from the skies.
Yes, and since you mentioned that about Sitchin being a fraud, I said I didn't want to get too much into it, but just for the sake of making this a worthwhile conversation, Andrew Bartz, the Akashic Records reader, did say that Sitchin's first 3 books are very accurate in terms of the events, but his timelines are a little bit off. So what's the deal with Zecharia Sitchin's 4th book onwards? Well, when I interviewed former 33rd degree Freemason Leo Zagami, he gave some evidence that Zecharia Sitchin was compromised by some forces within the Vatican and the Zionists who apparently thought that maybe he was exposing a little too much information about humanity's past that they didn't want people to know. So maybe that would explain why Bartzis didn't say Sitchin's 4th book onwards are accurate, because maybe he was compromised to some degree. Some people even said that they had a tough time reading Sitchin's 4th book onward without falling asleep, because it just trudges on. But still, his first 3 books anyway, definitely I would assert worth reading, and the Anunnaki creation story definitely worth it's preaching to the choir, because it's talked about all the time, but it never gets old, and there's always seems to be something that you could add to it, like the thing here about how one of your books here has the Anunnaki of Nibiru and the Snakemen of Eridu. Does that perhaps tie into what I said earlier about how the Anunnaki of Nibiru and the malevolent reptilian factions made an alliance to control humanity? Are those the Snakemen of Eridu that we're talking about here? Could you maybe elaborate on that?
Yeah, what I've found is that a lot of these depictions, a lot of these statements are metaphorical. Now, going back to the Vatican, going back to the Church of Rome, when you look at the whole world of religion, whichever religion it is the same, but under a different name. One person's Allah is another person's Yahweh, is another person's Jehovah. It is the same being under a different name. Because what the Roman Church did, what they did many hundreds of years ago, is they came up with a story of propaganda that they wanted people to believe. And what they did is, when they found a lot of the Jewish mystical scrolls and Jewish mystical writings, they studied them, and they used the likes of the Levites, Levite, serpent, Leviathan, which is Yahweh, which is the devil, which is Satan. So the God of the Bible is actually Satan and not this benevolent God that we're led to believe. They use these Jewish writers, these leaders of religions, to write, but they made them write what the Romans wanted people to believe. So what we have is everything that we read, whether that's Sitchin, whether that's the Bible, whether that's the Quran, whether that's the Torah. What we have is a filtered version of history. And Jesus didn't exist as a man. And that is quite evident when you actually look into the deeper teachings that they are really telling you. Jesus Christ was not born on the 25th of December. That is a Roman Sol Invictus cult. We have all of this stuff that has been corrupted by, certainly to a large degree, people who wanted to remove people's individual sovereignty. And it was actually the establishment, it was the state that wanted to own them, wanted to own their mind, wanted to own their spirituality, wanted to own their mental development. They basically wanted everybody to start worshipping something outside of themselves in order to take away where the true power lies, which is within. So the likes of Sitchin, again, has done this. Now, whether he was under influence, I would imagine that he was, because he did have connections to the Vatican, and the Vatican is devil worship, it is Satan worship, the planet Saturn, or the energy of Saturn. And when you start looking into the likes of who Mother Mary is, who is the female aspect of Saturn, Satan, which is Lucifer, and the Queen of Heaven. Now you can start looking into, what does Lucifer mean? Well, it comes from the word Hellel. Well, where does Hellel come from? It comes from Yahal, which means to wail. That then takes us into the Wailing Wall of Jerusalem, where the Jews believe that it's the Temple of Jerusalem, but it's not. It is the fort of Saint Antonia, which is a Roman fort for Mark Antony. So they are not. Nobody is worshipping what they believe they are worshipping. They are worshipping what the Roman Church wanted them to worship, and that is no different from Sitchin. So when I'm talking about the snake men, the serpent, the great serpent, the Leviathan, Satan rules this world. He is the God of the Bible. So everything that you read is a corrupted version of that, and they are bringing in their belief systems under different guises, under different false lights, because they want people to worship what they believe, but they want people to believe that they're worshipping something else. So Sitchin is now different. The Bible is now different. When I talk about snake men is really a metaphor for the God self. And there's many depictions, Christ on Mount Hermon, which is the Paramount Pictures symbol, which is on where 33 degrees longitude meets 33 degrees latitude. The number 33 in Masonry, the number 33 is Jacob's ladder, the spine. The 33rd spine is known as Atlas. So that then gives you Atlantis, which is the mind, which is consciousness. We have all of these different depictions, but we are worshipping things that we do not understand, because we are worshipping esoteric knowledge under a superficial guise. And the snake men are really the God self. And when you start looking at Eridu, you start looking at the Garden of Eden. What is Eden? Eden is a focused state of mind. And only with a focused state of mind can you attain this consciousness. And that is why we have the likes of Doubting Thomas. Thomas comes from Didymus, which means twin. In other words, it is the twin mind. It is the duality. It is the lack of focus. When the in is full, you basically become a sinner, because a sinner means missing the mark. It means you have not attained higher knowledge. And this is really the same story throughout the world, throughout history, throughout all of these religious books, throughout the ancient depictions or the modern day depictions of what these ancient temples mean. And we are really, and as I said at the beginning, we've been duped for thousands of years. And now I think people need to understand exactly how we've been duped in order to progress and go to where we should be in the correct timeline that humanity now should be in.
Okay, and you probably did cause a bit of a brouhaha with your claim that Christ didn't exist as a person. We've all heard this side of the story, that the story of Christ is just a metaphor for the sun moving across the zodiac. And there's also the whole thing about Christ and the Egyptian god Horus have so many similarities. It's what are the odds they're not the same thing? You'd be a moron if you thought that they weren't. But The idea that to say that they didn't exist is maybe a little bit of a stretch, because everything that we think, because our consciousness is created by our thoughts and our emotions, you would have to think that in some way, shape, or form, all these religious figures, because we envision them and there's those that believe in them, the collective, from a collective consciousness standpoint, they could perhaps exist in some other dimension, density, realm, whatever you want to call it. And getting back to that, Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartz's, who is my number one source of info on my show, I've made it very clear that I believe his ability to access the Akashic Records is perhaps the best way of getting the definitive answer to a question, even if it's unverifiable. It's still worth pointing out what he says. He pointed out that Jesus Christ was a solar being, but his story has been twisted, and if that's true, that raises the question: okay, were all the other religious figures, Muhammad, Abraham, Buddha, and all the rest of them, were they did they actually exist, and were their stories twisted? And I've been to a lot of spiritual centers. They've since been closed down because of the virus, but there were a lot of people who said that they've been listening to the ascended masters and the beings from the other side, and they say that there's definitely a Jesus or a Muhammad or a Brahma or whatever you want to call them, that they realize that religions are phony in the sense that they suppress your consciousness, but to keep you from realizing that you're the one. But to say that they didn't exist, no, they do, because people are channeling them, and there seems to be some idea to this. Christ did exist, but the story has been twisted. So it's never going to get old, but it makes for a great radio conversation. So I had to bring it to your attention. And you did write a book called The Code of Christ. So why don't you elaborate on this?
Yeah, well, you see, with channeling, you don't know who you're channeling, and there are some master deceivers out there. And when you talk about the Akashic records, you're really talking about the quantum field. Now, each and every cell, each and every subatomic particle of the body communicates with every other like cell. Protons, electrons, neutrons, etc. communicate with each other across the universe. So at any given time, we have the whole of the universal knowledge all around us and inside us, because we are not separate from the universe. So when you start looking at what you're talking about people channeling them and seeing them, yes, when you look at some characters of different religious books who had a high frequency vision and they saw manifestations, well, I have also seen manifestations. Now, when you have the 7 planets, the 7 visible planets, which is really a pinnacle, these planets set themselves in angles. Now, they communicate. Believe it or not, planets speak to each other. They communicate. Everything has a consciousness. Everything communicates, whether it's plants, insects, animals, humans. We all communicate in our different ways. Now, these planets communicate, but they are set in angles of arc. So these are the archangels. Now, these, because they are ethereal energies, they can manifest as they wish. Now, when you start looking at the New Age, which is really, again, just a new cage, it is now different to religion. It is just a different spin-off of Jewish mysticism that's been controlled by Rome. When you start looking, for argument's sake, that they call the Ascended Master Serapis Bey, well, who is Serapis Bey? Well, it comes from Egypt, and you're talking about Apis Osiris. It is the bull worship. It is all of these things. So when people tell you that they are channeling certain deities, then I would really query who they are actually channeling. Now, I don't deny, because I've seen things myself, and I've experienced these kinds of words that just appear. I don't know who they're from. You know, for the, you can turn around and say that, you know, I'm a Reiki master, I'm this, that, and the other, but you still don't know who you are channeling, because there is no real way of knowing. I have no doubt that certain people with a high frequency vision see these etheric manifestations of planets, of different energies, and they associate these things with biblical, because the whole of the world has been programmed to believe. The whole of the world, there's billions of people, 7 billion people in the world, and probably 5 or 6 billion or more of them are attached to one of the major religions. So they are going to believe, programmed wise, what those religions are telling them. Now, when you look at the likes of the Dead Sea Scrolls, now the Dead Sea Scrolls are the only Jewish mystic writings that have not been filtered by Rome because they were hidden. Now, I believe that I found where they're hidden in Roslin Chapel in Scotland, but that is another story. However, these Dead Sea Scrolls, the Qumran Caves scrolls, were written around the same time as Christ allegedly walked the earth, and yet they don't mention him once. When you look at the Gospels, they never describe Christ. You see, for the Saviour of the world, who walked around the Middle East, the very people who would have documented him have not mentioned him in the Dead Sea Scrolls, because as a man, he did not walk the earth. Now, when you start looking at documented evidence, like Pope Leo, that says it has served as well this myth of Christ, when you look at the current Pope that has said Jesus is metaphorical, they know that the man Jesus did not walk the earth. There may well be a solar energy that is associated. Now, this same solar energy is connected with Archangel Michael as well. There are lots and lots of solar myths. There are lots and lots of solar deities. But when you actually look at the origin of it, there is not one shred of evidence that a physical Christ walked this earth, because the physical Christ did not walk the earth. It is a metaphor, and it is a metaphor for many different things, as is Mary Magdalene, as is Joseph, as is Moses, as is Cain and Abel, as is Jonah. All of these things are telling you mystical truth, but they are using allegories, they're using parables, they are using stories to hide a message from the uninitiated. There is no evidence whatsoever, and there's many scholars that have looked for it and have not found it. There are Israeli archaeologists that have been searching for 70 years to find evidence of the Exodus. They have not found one string of evidence, because these things didn't happen. They are metaphors, and nobody has ever found a evidence that can stand up to scrutiny about a living, walking Christ, because they are metaphors for something else.
Fair enough. We'll leave it at that. Okay, another thing that's definitely going to open up a whole new can of worms that's always makes for a great radio conversation, the secrets of the pyramids. Many different people have given different takes on this. I'll try to breeze through it quickly with what I've heard people say. You mentioned first of all, the thing about the channelers, don't know if you can trust them. I did not watch Gosha's recent video of the secrets of the pyramids and what they were for. Gosha of Cosmic Agency. A lot of people love what she has to say. I think she means well and all, but of course there's a whole can of worms about whether or Tegetan Pleiadian contact is a genuine ET or just an artificial intelligence masquerading as an ET. Whole new can of worms. Discernment at the highest level, people, please use to get the truth out. But then again, when you hear so many different sides of the story, how can discernment possibly give you the truth? I mean, George Kavasilis, he is said that he remembers a past life of his where he was literally in the sarcophagus thing in the Great Pyramid, which it's not a sarcophagus strictly speaking, but you lie in there as if it was sarcophagus, he said, because he remembers doing this. He claims that either the four sides, the four corners of the Great Pyramid would interact with the four major elements: earth, fire, wind, and water, and you would interact with them in the sarcophagus, and then they would go out the capstone, which isn't there anymore, but when there was a capstone, that's what would happen. He says, I did that, and I remember doing that in a past life, and didn't detect anything from a body language, tone of voice standpoint to suggest he was lying. Of course, then there's also the Christopher Dunn theory about hydrodized zinc and hydrochloric acid solution being brought down the chambers of the pyramid, and they meet in the king's chamber to turn the pyramid into a power plant energy device. Similar to that, but yet different, is the pyramid code thing that Carmen Bolter, who I did interview on my show, encourage people to listen to that, talking about how the pyramids were used as energy devices, and that they were shining beacons to uh, the water that used to be in the Nile River from way back in the day when it was near the pyramids, would allow for the pyramids to like siphon the water up and interact with the energy that in the morning hours is very prominent, and it would allow pyramids to shine as beacons. And I mean, Zechariah Sitchin even got in on the thing, was saying in his books that the pyramids were used as a guide to help the rockets land on Earth. Although the idea that they would actually go through all that trouble to construct something just to be a guide for a rocket seems kind of silly. They would maybe it would help with that, but it had to be used for something else, you'd think. And I would have to think that the pyramids had multiple uses throughout the course of time. Could it be that all these people are actually right? The pyramids were actually constructed as a way of allowing humanity and other ET races, perhaps, to experiment with things throughout the course of time. So all these people maybe are right. How did the people who constructed the pyramids in the beginning, though, know that all these people were going to use it at some point in the future? That's another question that raises a can of worms. So I've babbled long enough. Now's your chance to give your take on the secrets of the pyramids.
All right. Well, my genetic bloodline is of Queen Scotia of Egypt, and so Egypt is really close to my genetics. And there's not one single answer as to what the pyramids are for, or indeed what the rest of the ancient monuments are for, because they are all really a sonic orchestra, and they are different shapes because there are different instruments within an orchestra. Now, when you look at some of the encodings that are within the pyramid, and I'll get to some of them in just a moment. How was the pyramid created? It was created by sound. And you said that people built them. People did not build them, but people used them, and they were taught how to use them, but they didn't build them. Now, when you look at how let's just take the Great Pyramid. How was the Great Pyramid created? Through sound, 432 hertz to be exact. And how do we know that? Because in sound experiments, at 432 hertz, it gives the shape of the tetrahedron. Now, when you look at how all of these monuments were sound resonant chambers, and the universe itself is a sound, you can then start to see, and it's far too deeper and longer subject to discuss it in a limited time that's available. But I go along the theory that it's actually the mathematical creator of the universe that's put these monuments there, and there are many different codes that indicate that within the pyramids, which is mentioned in the book. Now, let's just take one mathematical number for argument's sake: 153. So 153, it has relevance to the Bible because Christ and the disciples caught 153 fish. Jesus' ministry was alleged to have lasted for 153 days. You have the Vesica Piscis, which is the yoni, which is the womb, the Holy Grail. Inside that, you have the diameters, which is 153. When you look at the Great Pyramid, the entrance is on the 17th course level. Now, what is the relevance of that? Well, if you add up all the numbers from 1 to 17, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, and so on all the way to 17, it gives you 153. When you go inside the Grand Gallery, it is 153 feet long, and it has 153 steps. We have all of these relationships as well. In Hebrew, 153 is Anai Elohim, I am God. And we have a lot of mathematical signatures, and I found codes inside the Great Pyramid that I've deciphered, and it all indicates to me that it's the mathematical creator that created them through sound. So there isn't one reason for them. Now, mathematically, when you look at, again, looking at Sitchin's interpretation that there were actually sort of landmarks for rockets for extraterrestrial travelers, well, that may be closer to the truth than you realize, because when you look at the work of Karl Monk, and he's proved beyond any doubt, in my opinion, that mathematically all the monuments of Earth and beyond to the Sidonian city are connected with mathematical coordinates. So for argument's sake, the face on Mars tells you exactly how to find Stonehenge. Stonehenge tells you how to find Cydonia. The Great Pyramid tells you how to find Stonehenge. It tells you how to find Cydonia. So mathematically, they were a navigation system through mathematical numbers. So that there may well be a slight element of truth in what Zachariah has said there, because they are a satellite navigation system through mathematics, and they give not only their own precise location, but the location of other sacred monuments around the world. So there's not one definitive answer as to what they're for. I have worked out mathematically with a mathematical formula the speed of reality. Now, when I was working out this mathematical formula for the speed of reality, there was this one lengthy number that stood out, and it just, for some reason, it was just standing out on me. It was a really, really long numerical number. What I didn't realize at the time that I was working out the speed of reality as a mathematical formula is this lengthy number that stood out was one of the towns within the Great Pyramid. So the speed of reality and the Great Pyramid also are connected. Now, when you look at the Egyptian culture, they were all about the God self. They were all about consciousness and enlightenment. And the whole of their society was geared around this. Now, as I said previously, when I've put a map overlay of the human head over the Great Pyramid, it marks the exact location of these major chambers of the Great Pyramid. Now, even the likes of Graham Hancock, one of the most well-renowned researchers in this field, said that he doesn't know why the Great Pyramid faces north. Well, when you look at the carbon atom, which is tetrahedron, the pyramid shape, when you put the carbon atom and you face it due north, it rings like a bell. That is why the Great Pyramid is due north, because it rings like a bell. And it is all to do with resonance chambers. It's all to do with consciousness. I'm writing a book at the moment called The Sirius Point, when I go into this very, very deeply, and how the Egyptians were creating portals with X, Y, and Z axis points, which were 6-point coordinates of the X, Y, and Z axis points. And of course, when you look at the English language, you have X, Y, and Z at the end, which is coordinates. So there isn't one definitive answer as to what these monuments were for, but they were resonance chambers. They were transmuting and transfiguring, and they were allowing travel through different portals. In August 1971, police were called to Stonehenge because there was 5 rowdy men who had set up a tent and had set a campfire up inside the inner circle of Stonehenge. When police arrived, and there was a police and the farmer, they saw a flash of light, a scream, and the men disappeared, never to be seen ever again. Their fire was still burning and their tents were still pitched, but the 5 men vanished forever. These monuments are located where the 2 worlds meet. They are portals. And when you go to the entrance of the Great Pyramid, you'll see the double chevron. The double chevron in Hebrew is Shibua. That means the place where the 2 worlds meet. This is more than just let's get the water into the chambers. It's not. That doesn't even begin to describe what these monuments were. They were harmonious orchestras of resonance, and when certain star alignments formed, and the Great Sphinx of Egypt is a solar marker, you have the Sphinx that looks at the horizon. When you see Virgo come up the horizon, and Spicer, which is the alpha star of Virgo the Virgin, the Bible tells you that the Virgin appeared clothed in the sun with the moon at her feet. That happens on the 11th of September. So the soul of Christ, the great seed, was born on the 11th of September, 9/11, which is also significant in other ways, but it was not the 25th of December. So the whole Giza plateau is the original Bible, and it is solar myths, and it is an astronomical marker for the coming Christ. Now, when you go to Egypt, and what is Christ? What are Christians in Egypt? Well, it comes from Christians, which are the teachers of the oracles. It is this. There's so much involved. It's just too much to explain on a radio show. But but the Great Pyramid and all the other monuments were acting in harmony, and they were opening gateways, and they were resonance chambers, and that they were consciousness, enlightenment, teleportations, and that's really what was going on. And the Great Pyramid was created at a frequency of 432 hertz. I was on Richard C. Hoagland's show a couple of months ago. Now, Richard C. Hoagland is the man who famously geometrically mapped the Sidonian city on Mars, and he mapped it at 19.5 degrees. That is awfully significant when you look at the Great Pyramid, when you look at other monuments, when you look at Earth's energy belt, where rocks mysteriously can lift, etc. It's all significant. Even when you look at the mathematical formula for the movements of all planets, which is the Nineveh constant, that contains 19.5. We have a mathematical, wonderful universe that these monuments were fingerprints of. But it is such a wide and vast subject. But for me, all of those answers that other guests and other people have said are part of the story, but it doesn't go anywhere near explaining the full length of the story.
Yeah, and to go on a whole new can of worms regarding what the pyramids are meant to symbolize. I mean, you got George Cavazos claiming that he remembers being, when I say the people built the pyramids, I'm talking the entities, not necessarily humans, but the entities. He claims that he was with the entities that brought from Orion that helped bring the pyramid construction to Earth to channel the male energy of the Orion star system. He's talking from a primary source past life perspective. But then again, you got Andrew Collins talking about the Cygnus, the Swan mystery. He claims that the pyramids represent Cygnus the Swan, and complicated further, Lisa Renee said that the three stars in the Sirius system, Sirius A, B, and C, are representative of the three pyramids. So could they all be right? Well, just like you. What do you have to say about that?
Well, Orion's belt and Orion is esoterically it is the silver key. It is the gateway where souls enter and leave. Now, when you look at Vatican City, when you look at Jerusalem, they are aligned to Orion for that very reason. It is the silver key. Now, he who has the key has the knowledge. Now, when you start looking at why Jerusalem is such a hotbed, because it's aligned with the keys to heaven. So whoever controls Jerusalem contains the keys to heaven, the silver gate of Orion. Orion is pinnacle because it is the Egyptian underworld. It then goes into Osiris. It then goes into Saturn again, talking of the Saturn cults. You have lots and lots of monuments that seem to be aligned to Orion. When you start looking at Orion, represents the past, the present, and the future, as do the three pyramids. So the Great Pyramid represents the future. Now, this code that I found inside the Great Pyramid and deciphered inside the Great Pyramid, I didn't find it. It was found by somebody else, but I've deciphered it. It tells us that the future of mankind is a golden age. It is one of consciousness. It is one of enlightenment. And we go to and from Orion, according to esoteric circles, in order to leave and come back into this world through the underworld, which is controlled by Osiris. The Sirius system, Sirius A, Sirius B, which is Isis and Nephthys, the visible and the invisible sister. Sirius C for me is the solar sun, because Sirius A and the solar sun is in a binary. Now, because of what is known as the Doppler effect, when Sirius is going away from the sun, it is a red colour. When it is coming back towards us, towards the sun, it is a blue colour. Now, that is the Alpi Indian red and blue star Kachina prophecy, because when Sirius comes back, it floods the earth with enlightenment. So, Sirius A and B and C includes the solar sun, in my opinion. Why is Orion important? Because our physical bodies at least, come from Orion. The soul comes through Orion. Our genetics was created elsewhere. We are the life from the sky. We are the Anunnaki. all of these star systems, when you look at biblical prophets, they are not prophets, they are astronomers, and they are reading the celestial narrative, and they understand that certain star movements, which are really a cycle, they never change, but certain star movements will create certain things, certain events on Earth. Why did Christ get depicted as washing people's feet? Because it's astronomy. Because in zodiacal man, the feet are Pisces. Now the Christ era is the age of Pisces. Now, there are certain key words that represent different ages. The key words that represent Pisces is I believe. That is why we have the whole of this religious system that is a belief, because Pisces is I believe. Now, when you hand over to Aquarius, when the man appears in the sky, that is the I know. So we're going from I believe to I know. With that comes a lot of uprooted disruption, the loss of financial security, the breakdown of financial institutions. That is just the changing of an age. So when we are talking about the end of the world and biblical prophecy of the end of the world, what they're really talking about is the handover between ages. It's not going to be the end of the world. These biblical prophecies are astronomers reading celestial narratives. And all of the stars, there's so many different words that we use in modern day language that relate to the stars. If I tell you now to go and consider something, consider means to know the stars. When there is a disaster, it means bad star. When we have a child, we call them a youngster. That is a young star, because they are their bodies from a dead star from Orion. So they are now youngsters, young stars. We have A-listers in Hollywood. A-list stars are common stars. In England, in the UK, we have the likes of a prime minister, mini star. So the world is astronomy, and a lot of these movements of the stars are written. They are written in these monuments, and they are astronomical observatories. But Orion is pinnacle to many ancient cultures because it is the gateway to heaven, and that is why the Vatican City, and that is why Jerusalem is also aligned, because whoever controls the gate of heaven.
Yes, there's a lot of astronomy involved down on the Earth level, as above, so below. I even showed that myself when I bought a sterling silver starfish pendant and put it in the house of disaster, according to Feng Shui prophecy, to try to make everything in tune and in line. And speaking of making things in tune and in line, I think I need to take this time to ask you about, as someone who researches the esoteric, you realize there's so many different things out there that we can be artistic about and utilize. I mean, consider like myself as an example. I'm an Aries is my sun sign, but in sidereal astrology I'm a Pisces, and in the Chinese zodiac I am a tiger. And when you try to get astrology involved, you also want to get numerology involved. When you talk about personal days, personal months, and every so often when you try to incorporate all these things, you come across a contradiction of sorts. And I have always said it's better to think of it when you come across a contradiction in your different readings of astrology and numerology. Don't think of it as that this is going to mess up your day because of a contradiction. Think of it as this is a way to overpower in a good way the thing that seems to be the problem. Like you're throwing a monkey wrench into it for a good reason. To this can counter that, because there's so many different ways to look at your future, your horoscope, your readings, and how do we make sense of it when there's so many different civilizations and so many different codes in astrology and numerology. What do you have to say about it as someone who seeks the truth to this kind of stuff?
I once I had a friend who was an astrologer. Now for me, it's very rare for me to have any of this. I tend to just follow my own path and just do that. But I decided to, because there was something that there was in my childhood, and many people had commented on this, but nobody really knew what it was. But every one of them independently, without knowledge of the other one saying it, tell me that there was something deep rooted in my childhood. So I had this astrology reading. Now, again, no coincidence, she went straight to childhood, and she actually identified the actual issue, what was happening in my childhood, which again was certain stars which were holding me back, and certain stars that were stubborn and refusing to move out of the way. So for me, this particular reading was extremely accurate, and it was just talking about stars, different planets and different stars when you were born and through your life and through your childhood, and it was extremely accurate. How can we decipher what is true and what isn't? Well, we can't, because again, I look into not only the esoteric, but I look into quantum physics and quantum mechanics and the composite makeup of the universe. When electricity, it's the atom, it creates basically a subjective consciousness. Now, subjective is an opinion. It is also it's usually a matter of perspective. So if you change your perspective slightly, you will see something that you perhaps didn't before because of refraction of light and different things. Where am I going with this? Well, when you look at the universe, it is observer dependent. So in other words, when you look at the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, it tells you that things that are in existence because they are observed into existence. It's called the collapse of the wave function. When we look at something, we for argument's sake, I'll go outside now and I'll look at a tree. I only see the wood and the leaves of the tree. If I was able to see beyond that, I would just see interference patterns that are colliding, creating a shape. Now, what is happening is my senses are feeding information to my brain. My brain is creating a familiar world based on the data of the five senses. We never actually see the outside world. We don't know what the outside world looks like, because it is purely, our reality is an interpretation of the data from the five senses through the brain, and a lot of the time it fits in gaps based on memories. So we never actually see the outside world. When we actually look at an object that we believe is distant in the out there world, it's not. It's actually on the surface of your retina. So that brings to the question: is there such things as distance? Now, I have seen these interference patterns, these glimmers in reality. I have seen, believe it or not, I've looked at clouds and I've seen them turn into numbers. It is a numerical universe. Why wouldn't it be? But we are just decoding those numbers. Now, things exist in a state of superposition, which is many states at once. Putting it in layman's terms, if I'm now holding a dice, that dice has 6 possibilities. There are 6 faces, each with a different number. There are now 6 possibilities. If I roll that dice, and for argument's sake, the number 4 appears, the number 4 is now the only possibility. The other 5 have been reduced to 0 probability, because now the number 4 has manifest in my reality. This is how the universe works. There are many different potential outcomes, but when we focus on one of them, we manifest that outcome. Our perception of reality is deeply flawed because we are trapped within 7 colours, within 5 senses. We cannot exceed the speed of light, because if the physical body exceeds the speed of light, our subatomic particles would not be able to glue together and bind together. We will become nothing. So we are, for want of a better expression, we are imprisoned within 5 senses, within 7 colours. We never see the real outside world. Our view on things is a subjective view. It is an opinion. So how can anybody really tell you 100% accuracy that they know the truth and nothing but the truth? They can't, because it is their opinion of what is real. And that really is that's why I say don't rely on religious icons who are going to come and save you, because they're not. Don't rely on extraterrestrial beings that are going to come and appear and land on the grass of the White House. They are not. They're not going to come here to save anyone, because that is for us to do. Our reality is an opinion. Our belief is an opinion. So the best we can do is what we believe to be right. And no one can tell you that they have 100% of the answers, because every answer that any individual gives is purely their interpretation of data.
And I've always said, don't worry about your difficulties understanding the nature of reality. I can assure you mine are still greater. That's the reason I'm the host of this show. That quote is, of course, a parody on Einstein's quote, don't worry about your difficulties in mathematics. I can assure you that mine are still greater. And there's a lot of things we still haven't been able to figure out about how this universe works. Interesting you're mentioning all this stuff about quantum and stuff. I was watching a documentary about quantum interface with biology. You never really think about quantum and biology. You think of it as a physics thing, but if you want to understand how biology works in the way that it does, you have to understand quantum probability. And well, this was an interesting talk. It's a shame some of the people involved have to be suppressed by the colleges that they're from, matrix suppression of consciousness that they are still accustomed to. So there's certain things that they can't talk about, or they'll be called crazy. But we're getting there. The point is, we're getting there, and these people are becoming more awake to these kinds of things and trying to interface things to show how everything's connected. And interviews like this can certainly help make the most of that. And one thing that can definitely be researched a lot more to try to get a lot more things out of this cosmic soup that we are in. The Alchemy of the Gods, another ebook that you have here. Alchemy is thought of as being turning worthless metals into gold, but it's so much more complex than that. It really involves understanding that everything is just one consciousness, so anything is possible because anything can be transformed into anything because everything is all at once. But it's, of course, that's not the way that the universe makes it. The universe wants to have some sort of experience of some sort, so it creates us as a version of the Mandelbrot set within the greater Mandelbrot set, if you will. So, alchemy of the gods, what kind of alchemy are you talking about here, and how can one master their alchemy to be able to create a better world? And there's another question I have for you regarding Schrodinger's cat, but let's first of all talk about alchemy of the gods before we get into the whole Schrodinger's cat paradigm.
Yeah, of course. And what I was about to say, I'll wait for that question, because he was sort of going to touch upon that anyway. But where I am at the moment is I'm getting lots and lots of quantum equations, and these quantum equations are forming a pattern. And I think at the moment, based on what I'm looking into and what I'm getting, it's going to be a new physics. But obviously, I'll see how that unfolds and how that develops. So, alchemy of the gods, well, it goes a lot into sexual alchemy and really the transmutation of self through various practices that these establishment figures practice behind the scenes. You know, the likes of the origin of Holy Communion, which is the effluvium of Babylon, which is really semen and menstrual blood drinking, which is the elixir of life. So your Holy Communion really goes from a completely different origin to what you believe. So alchemy of the gods really goes into who these people are, the kind of sexual practices that they relate to, you know, the union of opposites, and it goes into the philosopher's stone, which is really the wisdom stone, reaching gold. And when you look at, you know, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, it's all about consciousness, and gold is consciousness. So when the Anunnaki came to mind for gold, well, it's really, again, a metaphor for enlightenment. And that's really what alchemy of the gods is. It goes a lot into ancient cultures and how they were using sexual alchemy. Where does the word chemistry, alchemy, and all that come from? Well, it comes from Egypt. formerly known as chem. So we have alchemy, chemistry, etc. So it goes a lot into the history of these sexual alchemical practices, and that's really what it talks about, and how that also comes into the Christ story as well, because we know that the great seed, the solar sun, is the heavenly Christ. But what is the earthly Christ? Well, the earthly seed is sperm. And when you start looking at the word savior, it means he who sows the seed. What does sperm mean? It means seed. So again, we go a lot into the sexual alchemy, the sperm, the seed, the great seed, the ovum, the Mary Magdalenes. What are they? And it sort of explains it in that book. The problem I have is when I write a book and when I finish a book, literally because information is coming in thick and fast every day. Once I finish one book, I have to do another one because there's so much more information that was missed. And I guess that just keeps you rolling, just keeps the ball rolling. And I look forward to the question about Schrödinger's cat, because that is also important when we look at quantum mechanics as well, and when I talk about branching and duplication at the moment. My opinion, and I do sometimes get a lot of resentment and a lot of personal insults for some of the opinions that I have, but my opinion is, when we were part of the undivided mind, now before anything is created, you have to think about it first. It is a thought. Thought, teote, toth, is really thought. So before anything is created, you think about it, it becomes an idea, which then gets manifest into existence. Now we can do that. We are able to do that. We're able to move things with our minds. We have all of these powers that we're not aware of. But when we were part of the undivided mind, we created everything in existence. Now, quantum physics tells you that if the part of the universe that we can see is replicated in the part of the universe that we cannot see, then there are many versions of you and I in this universe. 5,000 times every second inside our bodies is what is called, in physics, is called branching. Branching is where any quantum system in a state of superposition, which is multiple states at once, entangles and interacts with its environment, it creates branches. Branches are slightly different versions of each other. So the parts of the universe that we can see and the parts of the universe that we cannot see are slightly different versions of the same thing. This is when we start getting into parallel existences and multiple worlds. But Schrödinger's cat comes deeply into that with the philosophy of, is the cat alive? Is the cat not alive? Well, that depends on the observer. And I'll leave that to the question.
Yes, I was going to say that one might reject Schrödinger's cat, saying that the universe exists as it does in a certain way, and you, as a smaller representation of you as a Mandelbrot set within the greater Mandelbrot set, can only interact and interface with the universe. It and has nothing to do with whether you're observing it. Also, Nassim Harriman has said that the double slit experiment, they've totally screwed that up, he claims, regarding how it interprets consciousness. Everybody says it all has to do with observation, but it's not actually observation, he asserts. Nassim Harriman says it's actually interaction. You are interaction with the particles and such, which causes them to split into a wave or a particle. And Andrew Bashago, the time travel whistleblower, he told me he rejects Schrodinger's cat in his time travel experiences with the government, whether you believe him or not. He said he thinks that from what he experienced, Schrodinger's cat is basically a misconception. It has nothing to do with observation. The cat is what it is, regardless of how you're observing it. You just have the ability to interact with the universe. Um, do you agree or disagree, for lack of a better question?
Everything is an interaction, and this is an interaction. There are visible, invisible interactions. 15 times every second, there is a flash of light from matter called something else. That something else is antimatter. That's an interaction. Light that enables us to see is the collision of two things. So everything is an interaction. So yes, I do agree, and no, I don't. In some respects, no, I've time traveled as well, so I do have experience of not physical but conscious time travel. As I say, I've been back in time, and I've also had experiences and visitations where things have come forward in time. When you look at the quantum field, time is all one continuous motion. So what is past, what is present, what is future? It depends where you are. Everything is an interaction. Going back to the double slit experiment and other experiments and how the universe works, things act differently under observation. I guarantee if you're singing in the bathroom mirror and you think you're by yourself, you will go for it. As soon as you are become aware that somebody's watching you, it changes your behavior. Now that is no different in the subatomic world. And how does the subatomic world know when it's being observed? Because the observer is bouncing photons off the observed. It knows it is being observed and it changes its behavior because of it. These photons are able to travel forward and backwards in time. We have electrons and positrons that are traveling forward and backwards in time. All of these different things are a result of interaction of some kind. So everything that exists is an interaction. Everything that we see in our familiar world is the result of interference patterns. That is an interaction between different waveforms. So everything is really an interaction of some kind. And I do look at the observation, bringing things into existence for observation, because we do. And what may be cosmic soup behind me, when I turn around, it's not cosmic soup anymore. It becomes part of my visible reality, part of my world. So science is always contradicting. Science is always furthering. There are different science. There is the mainstream science. There is the esoteric science. There is spiritual science. The problem we have at the moment is that they are seeing each other as competitors. They are seeing each other as opposites. They are not enemies. And if they were to work together, then I think as a race we would move forward a lot faster. So Schrödinger's cat, well, what is Plato's cave? Plato's cave is a false reality that we believe to be real. Schrödinger's cat, again, you may see it as dead, and a version of you may see it as alive. So if there's no one in the woods, is there a sound? Yes, there's just no one there to hear it. When we look at something, is it there because we're looking at it, or is it already there anyway? All of these different questions, or is it being observed into existence by someone else and we just happen to pick up on their reality? No one can really define the answers to these questions. Sometimes we just have to just keep rolling and just keep filling our way through. But the reality is we are a part of something, and I think therefore I am. That the very fact that I'm able to say that and to think that means there is something there to do the thinking, as was said during that phrase. Whatever it turns out to be, whether it's a simulation, whether it's a green screen, whether it's an avatar, whether it's nothing, we are having some kind of experience, and that really is the only definite thing that can be gained from this. We are experiencing something, but as part of the undivided mind, original undivided mind, we all created this. And when somebody says that I'm 70 and you're 50, so I came down to earth first, we didn't. We all separated at the same time from a place of no time. But there are just so many different things that we don't understand or can't understand, and the greatest minds of the human race still can understand them.
Indeed, there are a lot of things we can't quite understand yet. And, well, on that note, the nature of the universe, we've been told a lot of things about how it's vacuum in space and stars are nuclear fusion, and now all of a sudden we're hearing things like the stars are actually electromagnetic and space should be thought of as more of a plasma membrane, and which raises the question, all these alternate theories, you would expect the powers that be, if you will, are going to come out and attack that as being fake news or fake info. But people, if they are awake enough, will be able to discern through consciousness what the truth actually is. And well, any advice out there for all those people in the field of research that want to get this stuff out, but fear that they might lose their job if they were to do so? I mean, I got an uncle who's in aeronautical engineering at a college, and he wouldn't dare say anything about 9/11 being a staged event, even though he, from his work on planes and all, I know that he knows that it's all a lie, and he won't say anything because there goes his chance of making a college paycheck. I mean, with this, the way the society is being locked down and all, hopefully it's all a cover story to conceal the fact that things are going to be released that's going to allow for humanity to do all sorts of great things and take part in new technologies and make the most of this stuff that we're talking about, the quantum field. Well, let's harness it. Let's use it to teleport from one area to the other instead of planes and all that. But I mean, some people say humanity isn't going to be able to handle the truth because it's too much of a shock to the system. And I can't help but do a double face palm when I hear that, because I've been talking about this forever, and to think that just because my fellow humans can't cope with being lied to for so long, you have to take it little by little, and I still have to be a slave to the system, and we still have to be doing shows and writing books to talk about this stuff. I mean, okay, I'm digressing and babbling, but you see where I'm getting with this. What do you see for the future of humanity regarding this info, and what can be done as a solution of sorts to get this stuff out to people without having to worry about the suppression of this information?
Yeah, for me, really, I tend to say what I feel I need to say, and I just tell it as it is. And if someone is offended by that, then they really need to analyze why they are actually particularly offended by what I'm saying. Because when I say something, it's not because I'm just saying it, it's because I've evidenced it and I've found evidence to support what I'm saying. Now, again, when I was talking about reality is not what we think it is, we don't see true reality. The only true reality is the waveform, and the waveform manifests based upon various criteria. Now, the thing for me is when people talk about vacuums, and nothing in existence is solid, and every one of us really is 99.99999% empty space. The atoms that make us up are the same. Now, I would argue that within that 99.99999% empty space around atoms, there is an intelligent field that is observing them into existence. Now, the problem I have when people mention a vacuum being completely empty is in the same breath they mention the Casimir effect. Now, the Casimir effect proved that there is a force in a vacuum that has an influence on physical objects. But that's kind of a contradictory statement, because there are not meant to be physical objects inside a vacuum. So therefore, there isn't such thing as a vacuum. So we do have to really just take and analyze some of the things that we're being told. What is my advice to people who are scared to say something because of personal consequence? If the personal consequence is going to be so bad for your life, then don't say it. Because I learned the hard way that you're not going to take everyone with you. I learned the hard way that you can burn yourself out and you can lose all your energy for people who are never going to see what you are showing them. You are going to get seriously hurt if you keep banging your head against the wall. So let them go and concentrate on the people who wish to listen. If speaking about this is going to cause so much of a detrimental effect on your life, then just choose who you speak to. Because I've walked out of a career. In 7 years' time from now, I would have been retired. I would have had the life of leisure. I could have done what I wanted to with my time. Full pension, no problems whatsoever. But I chose to walk out of that because I felt I no longer belonged there. I felt that some of the things that I was seeing and witnessing and being told to do was completely contrary to where I wanted to be, and I made the decision to leave. When you leave, and I had nothing to leave to, I had nothing to go to, and yet I'm still here. And I'm still surviving, and I'm still here, and I'm still talking, and I'm still having platforms like this to discuss what I found and what I believe. But sometimes you just have to choose your audience. And sometimes if it's going to be so much of a bad consequence for you, then speak to those who listen, and don't compromise yourself by speaking to people who are never gonna hear, never gonna see. But you will find that at some point the influence and whatever will burst the information out of you. You won't be able to keep it quiet forever because it will just come out. But don't compromise yourself. Don't put yourself into a bad jeopardy just because you feel that you want to try and change someone's opinion or someone's mind. If those minds and opinions are not ready to be changed, you're not going to change them. So move on and concentrate on the people who wish to hear.
Good advice, and I guess might as well bring this interview. Before I bring it to a close, of course, I want to give you the chance to get out anything you'd like to get out. Also, interesting how you have UFO Con 2020 on your website. Basically every conference this year has been either postponed or canceled. And I've decided to make the most of it and not ask for refunds and let the universe decide what my route should be, and rather just let the use my tickets for the 2020 conferences to pay for the ones in 2021. I don't know if the same thing happened with UFO Con. That's one conference I've never been able to get to, even though I wanted to get to it. It always takes place in California in the beginning of the year, and I believe it may have taken place before the pandemic started. Were you at that conference, and anything special regarding conferences that you want to get out? Cause nobody knows where it's going to be going, but hopefully things will be opening up soon, and all these tickets that we bought for conferences in 2020 will be able to use them next year or the year after, if that comes to know how long it's going to take. Anything you'd like to get out regarding your future and whatnot?
Well, yeah. Well, that particular conference came about as a result of a radio show, and it was 4 a.m. in the UK, and it was probably a nice, friendly time in America. And what I didn't realise is the radio host is the organizer of the conference, and I was asked if I wanted to do a talk in the February of this year, and of course, yes. So I was flown out to America, San Francisco, and the only questions being asked at that particular time at the end of February were, have you been to China in the last 2 weeks? That was pretty much all they were interested in. So I was there for a week or 6 days and did my talk, last but one on the whole conference. I was there for the week, and on the Sunday, last but one speaker was me. I started to fly back home on the Monday. When I got back to the UK, which was now Tuesday, because it was an overnight flight, literally a couple of days later, there was talk of the governor of San Francisco actually locking down San Francisco and different things. So I just escaped. And So I was sort of in there for a week, got back to the UK in safety, and then the lockdowns began to happen. So I got in and out, luckily. I'd got lots and lots of events uh, set up, different conferences, different live talks, but of course they were all cancelled because of what has happened. So literally all I'm doing now is online stuff. So that's all I can do because I can't go to an audience because they won't allow group gatherings. So I came back from San Francisco and I sort of hit the ground running. Really, there was things happening and I started to make grounds and there was talk of me going back very soon after, to the likes of in the desert conference and that kind of thing. But that was all cancelled and that was all stopped. But I did a couple of high key American radio shows as a result of doing that conference, and it was a shame that everything was cancelled because I did hit the ground running. But we'll see what happens next year. What am I doing now? I'm writing 4 books in one go, which is quite a challenge because I feel the word still needs to get out, just a different medium. I'm doing radios, I'm doing online conferences, so I'm still getting the word out, but just in a different capacity. So where is this taking me? I don't know. It's taking me down the line of quantum physics, quantum equations, deeper and deeper and deeper into the esoteric knowledge, and it's just really just taking me very deep down the rabbit hole. So we'll see where it goes.
Yes, and I can't argue with the fact that a book is definitely a better medium than a radio show for getting out information. I've never actually written a book in the strict sense of the word to be able to sell it to get out information to people. I've been doing radio nonstop. I like to read, but when it comes to writing, I'm in more of an internet forum poster, not a book writer. I can't help but envy people like you who find a way to write books. Well, maybe things will change. Maybe the stars will align for people to enhance their creativity in the near future, for people like me to do things of a new nature, to perhaps write books and all, and look at things in a whole new way. And this fascinating interview allowed us to look at things in a whole new way, and very synchronistically, the things we're talking about with things that I'm researching, it all seems to come together. So I see great things for humanity in the future, but we all have to weather through this storm. And thank you so much for coming on my show to help make sense of this crazy reality that we're living in. So I wish you the best of luck on your future endeavors. Take care and namaste, my friend. Enjoy the rest of your trek through infinite consciousness. Bless you for coming on my show. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. Thank you.